Let's go ahead and open up in prayer, shall we? Abba, Father, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, we just want to bless you and thank you for this Sabbath. And we just want to thank you, Yahweh, no matter how much the devil is afflicting of us. But when we are weak, you are made strong through us. If we'll only believe, Yahweh, if we'll only take that defining moment when the flesh is being afflicted and we just want to roll over and die and cry, uncle. Instead, we tell the flesh, get into subjection, to bring it under subjection and under control so that we are dominating the flesh and not the other way around. So Yeshua can help us with whatever it is we're going through at that particular time. Abba, I pray for Kamara's wife who's suffering from asthma, Yahweh. He's been trying to get her here the last couple of weeks, and it's just like she's just constantly being afflicted with this thing and is feeling so fatigued and wore out. And we all pray, Abba, in the name of Yeshua, that you send forth your Spirit, that you will heal his wife, Abba, that she might be able to join him on the Sabbath together, Abba, praising and worshiping you and listening to your word and growing in the faith, Abba, instead of laying in the bed and feeling depressed. So we pray, Yahweh, that you will lift her up, even as we now pray, Yahweh, that your Spirit will go forth and lift her up. We also pray, Abba, for the Gonzalez family. Has not been here for the last couple of weeks because baby Noah has been suffering from a respiratory illness. And we pray, Abba, that your Spirit will be there to heal him as well, that they may be able to come back into the fold, Abba. So we just want to bless you and thank you for everything that you've done for us, Abba. I pray that you anoint everybody here, that you empower everybody here, that you help everybody to break loose, Abba, from whatever bondages or strongholds they may have in their life that they're desiring to break through. I pray that you give them the all wisdom and spiritual understanding they need to understand the nature and the dynamics of whatever it is they're going through, that they may be able to increase their faith to another level and ask Yeshua to break the bonds of Hasatan in all of our lives, Abba. So Yahweh, I pray that your Spirit will come now, speak through me, Abba. Whatever words that are not of you, I pray that they fall to the ground, come to nothing, and they are not heard, Abba. And I pray that only that your word coming through your Spirit will resonate loud and clear. And we rest that in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Amen. Okay. So as I was stating before, I think what Shaul is trying to get across in the book of Galatians that we went through and now Colossians, I find as I sit and read it in great detail, I find so many parallels to what I'm seeing going on. And yet in the body of Messiah, it seems like we're fighting over which days are holy, which calendars to go by, or any other arguments that people want to fight against. And I sit there and I think to myself, you know, I was in that camp for many years myself. I know what that is. But I've gotten to the point where I don't want to fight anymore because I'm fighting the wrong enemy. I don't want to fight against my brothers and sisters. I'm still going to call out what I believe is true, no matter what, you know, if I disagree, but I don't want to fight over it. I don't want to get into that kind of spirit of striving and contention, because that's where Hasatan comes in and he busts up the brethren in the body of Messiah. I don't want to be a party to that. But I stop and I think to myself, you know, if these people spent as much time on studying spiritual warfare principles, on how to guard themselves against the enemy coming in and turning their lives upside down, and they become a functioning part of the body of Messiah rather than a dysfunctional part of the body of Messiah, which then winds up making other parts of the body of Messiah dysfunctional through their dysfunctionalism, we would be a different group of people. And so I feel like in the last several months, probably since Passover, is Yahweh's really been having me harp on this thing over and over again. And I'm being repetitive because I feel like Yahweh wants me to be repetitive. Because what's happening is we've all been conditioned usually by the church, and we're taught a certain way in the church. And then when we come over this way, a lot of it doesn't really apply. And so what happens is that a lot of us are very, very ignorant in how to fight spiritual warfare. And so this is what Paul is talking about in Colossians. So what I want to do is, before I get into chapter 4, and we're only going to get through about half of it today, I want to rehash what we went through in chapter 3, as that was like 3 or 4 weeks ago when we did this. So my brain gets a little bit foggy at times, so I want to rehash it myself. So one of the things that Shaul was trying to get across was he was admonishing them to seek higher wisdom. To seek higher wisdom. And so many people that I see fighting and arguing over different subjects are not really seeking higher wisdom. They just want to battle, they want to fight, they want to argue, they want to have the one up on somebody else, that they know more than somebody else, and as we know, knowledge puffs up. And so we got a lot of that going on. The second thing that Shaul was getting across in chapter 3 was dying to this life is what gets you there. Dying to this life is what gets you there. And I don't know about you, and if you're anything like me, the old man inside me does not want to die. Every minute of the day, that guy is pushing the lid of that coffin up out of the ground and trying to take redominating control over my life. And it takes time to examine ourselves, to develop spiritual sensory acuity, to try to understand just what is this old man. How do I identify his traits and characteristics so that when he does rise up, I can push him back into the grave where he belongs. The third thing that Shaul was getting across in the scriptures was, hold on, because you will appear with Messiah at the blowing of that seventh trumpet. I mean, this is what juices us. This is what keeps us coming back Sabbath after Sabbath, is the fact that we look forward to the time when we will have that glorified body and this whole thing is done and over. And it's just going to seem like a fleeting moment in the history of life when you consider being in that state of mind and that state of body when that time comes. If we didn't have the hope of the resurrection, then our lives are futile, as Scripture says. But we hold on to this. And it's like another day, another day, another day. And it's just getting more and more grueling as time goes on. The other thing, the fourth point that Shaul was trying to get across is to put to death the works of the flesh. As I stated before, I did like a 9-part series on walking in the flesh. And what walking in the Spirit as well. It's kind of mixed in together. And I took each one individually and broke them down to show people how do you identify these traits of walking in the flesh and walking in the Spirit. Because sometimes they're quite subtle and they're hard to distinguish. And when we're coming out of this world, we are trained to walk in the flesh. And so for us to not walk in the flesh is not natural. It is not natural because we need to put on the nature of Yeshua. And when we put on the nature of Yeshua, that's where the conflict starts to come in. The fifth point that Shaul was trying to get across is there are 7 different types of inner critics, which I went through individually, which is the perfectionist, the taskmaster, the inner controller, the guilt tripper, the destroyer, the underminer, and the molder or the manipulator. And these are some of the kinds of people that, if you've been in the body of Messiah long enough, you learn to identify these kinds of traits that are within people that Shaul was talking about. And it's important to be able to identify. Now, I'm not saying that we need to go around and saying, Joshua, let me examine Joshua and let me examine Tom and put him in these categories. I'm not saying about and that he's no good because he does this and Tom's no good because, no. We don't have the right to judge with condemnation, but we are told to make judgments. And so I have to look at the fruits of a person and determine whether or not the person is producing good fruit or bad fruit. We are commanded to do that. And so a lot of people like to argue, oh, well, you don't have the right to judge somebody. Well, there's 2 kinds of judgment in Scripture. One is judgment to condemnation, which we do not have the right to do. But the other judgment is simply that if I see somebody stealing something, I have to make a judgment. I saw you steal it. Right? We all do that every single day. We make judgments all day long. So these people that like to have these petty arguments, oh, how dare you judge me? Well, they think that I'm judging them, that I'm condemning them. I'm not condemning you. I'm just calling what I see. You know, if you got something else going on, explain it to me. But you got all these different kinds of personalities and different characters of people who come into the body of Messiah and they create different kinds of dynamic problems in the body of Messiah. And the quicker that you can identify these kinds of traits, the easier it is to be able to ward off any potential problems. And that comes with maturity over time. Sorry, I got this. This should have been number 6. We are united together in the process. No matter how bad or how good things seem to be sometimes, we are all united together in this process. That's why we all come together, and everyone has a different gift that Yahweh has given. They have different fruits, and you share them with each other. A person who doesn't have gives to one that needs, or that does have gives to one that has a need, or whatever the case may be. This is what we need to do in the body of Messiah. We all need to discover what our gifts are. It's not just a matter of coming on the Sabbath. It's about discovering what is the nature of your call. Who are you in Yeshua, really? Who are you, really? Have you really narrowed down and pinpointed exactly who you are in the Messiah? Because the sooner that we can do that, the sooner we can get about the Father's business and be more accurate and more precise about our calling and be more effective. The 7th and final one is wrath is coming because people will not cooperate. So that was one of the last things that Shaul was trying to get across in chapter 3, is that this wrath is coming because people are just not cooperating. I mean, it's clear out in the world they're not cooperating. They don't want to come in. But I see a lot of uncooperation in the body of Messiah. And this is the nature of the book of Colossians that Shaul is trying to get across and plead and argue with them as best as he was able to get them to understand that the kind of things that you're getting involved with are very foolish in nature and they're not going to serve you very well. So let's go to verse 1. Masters with respectful titles, give your bondservants what is just, equitably holy, and fair in proportion, knowing that you also have a master in heaven. So what he's saying is that whatever you're doing to your brother or sister or anybody else, you better make sure that it's on the up and up. And you better make sure it's kosher. Because don't forget that the Messiah is now looking at you as your master. And if you're mistreating people and you're doing things wrong, or you're withholding things from people that you shouldn't be withholding because Yahweh's put it in your hand to bless them with, but you want to hold it because you're greedy, then guess what? With judgment you measure out, it's going to be measured back to you and then some. And so a lot of times the problem with this illusion is that we don't equate that when we do this, it brings an opposite and equal reaction, or sometimes more than equal reaction. It brings negative consequences into our life. Because we don't stop to think, when I did this, I'm now paying the price for when I did it. Because if we sow, we're going to reap. And that's what this is all about. So let's take a look at Ephesians chapter 6, verse 9. It says, and you, masters, do the same things to them, giving up threatening, that is menacing. That's the gist of that word. Knowing that your own master also is in heaven, and there is no partiality or favoritism with him. So he's going to look at you, and he's going to make a judgment as to whether or not you're being fair with the people you're dealing with. Now, for those of you that weren't here earlier in the teaching, I'm sorry, it's going to probably, some of what I'm going to say is going to feel like you're walking into a 2-hour movie at 1 hour and 50 minutes in. And you're going to say, what's he talking about? You know, who's this person? Who's that person? Why is this person doing this? Why is that? And it's really a little hard to understand where I'm coming from unless you had that foundation. So I pray that you forgive me if I don't articulate it perfectly in a way that makes a lot of sense. But particularly in Colossians chapter 2, I went through in detail there about Jewish sophistry. How Shaul was telling them, don't be deceived through Jewish sophistry, which is vain but misleading reasoning through Jewish way of thinking. Christians like to use chapter 2 to promote their idea. See, you don't need to keep the Sabbath. You don't need to keep the new moons. You don't need to keep the feast days, blah, blah, blah. No. This is a Talmudic Jewish thing coming on the Talmudim. And they're oppressing them with their Talmudic philosophy. It has nothing to do with Christians. There were no Christians at that time. So anyway, Talmudic Pharisaism may have influenced Shaul's emphasis on being just as masters or business owners with employees. See, in this region, as I laid out in the beginning, same with Galatians, this was a trade route area, and the Laodiceans and the Colossians were known for their fur trade. And so they were very, very profitable societies in their day, and they made really good money on producing furs. So many of the believers may have been masters or employees where they had employers where they had employees. And so what Shaul is doing is he's trying to tell them that if you're going to be in that position, then make sure you're dealing fairly with those who are underneath you, that when you pay them fairly their just rewards, as Scripture tells us. Many were in business to sell furs. We see in chapter 2 that they were a source of frustration and were warned against by Shaul, as I had stated there. Let's take a look at just a couple of Talmudic type philosophies in certain sects. I do not want to paint all of Judaism as being corrupt in this kind of way, but there are certain sects of Judaism that apply certain philosophies to the Gentiles as they define them. To cheat non-Jews in Sanhedrin 57a, it says, a Jew need not pay a Gentile the wages owed him for work. And I didn't put it here, but there's another passage I read in Talmud where it says that you can hire a Gentile and he'll work all day long, and when it comes to the end of the day, you can make up any excuse that you want not to pay him his wages, simply because he's a Gentile. This is a terrible mindset. It's not based on Torah whatsoever. Jews have superior legal status over Gentiles. Baba Kama 37b, if an ox of an Israelite gores an ox of a Canaanite, there is no liability. But if an ox of a Canaanite gores an ox of an Israelite, the payment is to be in full. Sounds like a double standard to me. And the point here is that we, as believers in Yeshua, should not have double standards in the body or outside the body to unbelievers. Because if we're going to have a double standard to the outside, then we're not being a light. And if we're not being a light, then people aren't going to be drawn to the kind of behavior that we're demonstrating when we have that double standard. Baba Mizia 24a, if a Jew finds an object lost by a Gentile, it does not have to be returned. And this is also affirmed by in Baba Kama 113b. So I just want to put a little bit in here to show that in this region, Shaul had to constantly deal with the various Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the various Jewish sects at that time that were all coming against the New Testament believers and were trying to influence them on how they should do things. And unfortunately for Shaul, he couldn't hang around all the time. And when it came to the Colossians, he was very rarely ever there at all. Most of his stuff was done by letters and through couriers and so forth like that. So he didn't have the privilege of being there to actually watch over them week after week and day by day as a community. So they were like exposed sheep. It was very, very difficult, and it was very frustrating for him. So what we see is the counter to this concept of Talmudic Judaism about taking from those who are not believers. If one man's ox hurts by goring or afflicting disease on another's so that it dies, then they shall sell as merchandise into slavery that ox, and divide and split it in two, the money from it, and the dead ox they shall also divide and split it in two. Unless it was disease, then you wouldn't do that. But the point here is that this is Torah, and this is righteousness. And this is exactly the diametrically opposite way of thinking in Talmud. Talmud is of the flesh. That's why Shaul was saying in Galatians, it is the covenant of Hagar. Talmudic Judaism is the covenant, and I'm not going to say just that. I'm going to say any religious concept that does not have Yeshua in it, that appeals to the flesh, it makes you do a lot of fleshly type things, or a lot of way of thinking that's in the flesh, that's all the covenant of Hagar. And it has absolutely nothing to do with Yeshua whatsoever. So let's move on. Continuing back in Colossians chapter 4, verse 2, continue to the point of perseverance. Continue. Now, I have spoken in the past, and I'll get into this just in a minute, about getting to the point of perseverance. This is where I see so many of us, and I include myself, where it seems to be a very frustrating moment in your life. You believe and you know you should persevere in a given situation that's going on in your life, and you're praying and you're fasting and you're studying and you're doing everything that you can, and you just keep seeming to hit this wall. And you hit this wall and you hit this wall and you hit this wall, and it just seems like you can't break through this wall. And it gets to be very, very frustrating. Well, there's a process by which we go through in order to do this. We'll get into this in a minute. And to get to this state of perseverance, earnestly in prayer, being vigilant as a watchman in it with thanksgiving in the spirit of worship. So in this process, it's got to be in the spirit of worship. Lack of self-control prevents perseverance. Let's take a look in 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 5 through 11. Faith, virtue. To virtue, knowledge. To knowledge, self-control. This is the moment right here in this equation, in this formula, as Shaul was giving, or Peter, I'm saying, this is where so many of us have a problem, the self-control. The self-control is the problem. Because every time I watch not only myself, but I watch other people who are going through what they're going through, they're doing really well, they're using self-control, and they're getting closer to their goal. They're getting closer to breaking through to the other side to get to what it is that they want. And then Hasatan finds some creative way to come in and introduce something into that person's life to the point where they lose their self-control. And it's at that moment that the perseverance slips out of your hands of victory. And it's gone. It's the self-control is where the problem is. We all have that problem. That seems to be the defining moment for so many of us in the situations that we're going through, is this self-control. So if you maintain that self-control and you stay highly focused on that self-control, then you will get the victory. The perseverance in your circumstances will come about. However long that trial is, but you cannot give up. And the devil is going to do everything he can to try to get you to give up. So once you break through that, then you go to divineness. That's the next level that you go to. And then from there, true brotherly kindness. Oh, we're all kind of friendly towards one another. We give each other a hug, maybe a kiss or something on the cheek. And that's all good and all that kind of stuff. But I'm telling you, I know that there's a level of brotherly kindness that goes far beyond what we probably understand right now. And I don't think many of us are ready to understand what that is, much less implement it. I'm trying to, and I think I'm getting better at it, but I know there's something that's eluding me about this. Anyway, brotherly kindness that includes affection, to holiness, brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. I'm sorry, that's a double on that one. For in verse 9, there is no doubt these things are yours, for if there is no doubt. Notice that word if, because it's conditional. If. Do we really, really believe that that's down inside of us? It may be dormant, but do you really believe that Yahweh has deposited that seed inside of you, even though it's just laying dormant? If you really believe that, then you got a shot. Because if you don't even know that it's even there, it's hard to activate it. You know, we're told to stir the gift of the Spirit. But if you don't even know how to stir the gift of the Spirit, it's not going to get stirred, you know? So the thing is that we have to believe that it's there. And there is no doubt in your mind that it's there. These things are yours inside, and they abound and increase. You will neither be barren, inactive, lazy, and useless, nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Master Yeshua Messiah. Verse 10, therefore, brethren, be even more diligent with speed to make your call as an invitation, an election, which is a divine selection. You have been divinely selected. It was not some coincidence that you're here today. I'm not talking about here in this place. I'm just talking about in the body of Messiah. You had a divine selection. Your name was written on a list. At a certain point in your life, Yahweh had decided it's time to call this person. Because why did He not call you a few years earlier? Why did He not call you the day before? It was not time. It was just not time. Sure, by firm force, if you do these things, you will never stumble. So this is a process that if we keep this in mind, and as I stated before, this self-control is the key moment. This is the defining moment that we all got to battle and fight against. We've got to fight this self-control problem. And when we do this, we then start to progress along to these other levels of manifestation of Yahweh's nature being manifest in our lives, inwardly, then outwardly. And then he says, you will never stumble. For so an entrance will be supplied by finishing with aid to you abundantly into the everlasting kingdom of our Master, Savior, Yeshua, Messiah. So going back to Colossians chapter 2, verse 3, it says, meanwhile, praying also for us, that Yahweh would open to us a door as a portal or an entrance for the word to be spoken, to speak the mystery. Here we go again about this mystery. Obtained through secret religious rites. I'm going to expound on this in just a minute. Of the Messiah, for which I am also in chains as tied hand and foot. So he's completely bound. This is the kind of walk that we're in. We are bound to do righteousness. This is what we're called to do. We don't have the right to have one foot in the world and another one in the body of Messiah or in the kingdom of Yahweh. We are bound hand and foot. We got to be a total slave to Yeshua to do the right thing. So let's go back to this obtained through secret religious rites. You see, what we're going through in this life's experience, Yahweh is grooming us and preparing us step by step to bring us to a point of maturity in our walk, that He can have the confidence that He can give us an understanding at a level that we may not currently have, that He can entrust it with us. And for many years, I couldn't be trusted. And I think at a certain degree, I still can't be trusted. And that's why a lot of it has been still held back on me. I know it's being held back. I know it's kind of like if you're married and you got a good marriage, but you're really not doing everything towards your wife that you really should, you know she's holding out on you. You know that she's got more good stuff waiting for you, but you ain't going to get it. You ain't going to get it. Because she doesn't trust yet that your heart is 110% there. And until she's satisfied that you are really, really there, you're not going to ever discover what's hidden inside your wife. And it's true for the husbands too. It tends to be more for the wife. Wife needs to know that she can feel secure with her emotions and her beliefs and whatever else she's entrusting you with. So the same here. Is that I believe that what Yahweh is doing is He is putting us through this ritual or an initiation. We're going through an initiation. We're being immersed into this religious rites where we're experiencing this life with Yeshua. And as time goes on and as you progress, He reveals a little more. He reveals a little more. He reveals a little more. You know? And so as we go through that, these things become experiences that start to teach us how to connect the dots of what Yahweh's trying to explain to us in His Word that's eluded us so much of our life. So the mystery, in part, is obtaining power over the enemy. This mystery is about attaining power over the enemy. Something that too many of us don't believe we possessed. We don't believe that we possess it. And it's a shame. Because this is the one area that I think most Torah teachers are not even talking about. They're not talking about this kind of power. We're talking about all kinds of other stuff, but we're not talking about this kind of power. And we have been beaten down so badly. Any of you guys ever see this program that used to be on TV called Bully Beatdown? You ever see that program? It's kind of interesting because they take a guy who's like a wimp, you know, and he's being beaten up by a bully in his neighborhood all the time, just intimidated and so forth. And so what they'll do is they get this MMA circle, you know, this cage fighting, you know. And so what they'll do is they'll go and they'll propose to the bully, you come into my cage with an MMA fighter, we'll give you 3 rounds and $5,000 for each round. And if the MMA guy makes you tap out or submit or whatever, during the round, you lose $1,000 for each time. And so it's a really kind of a funny thing in a way, but what happens generally is the bully gets beat down really bad. I mean, he starts vomiting and throwing up, you know, because he's been hitting the stomach so much at a time. And that's what's happened to us, is that we have been beaten down by the enemy so badly in this life to the point that we don't have the sense of encouragement that we can rise to a higher level and become something that Yeshua was. Scripture says that Yeshua came that He might destroy the works of the devil. Well, if He destroyed the works of the devil and He lives in us, what does that mean? Can we really understand that? Can we tap into that? Can we accept that? See what I was reading before? If you believe it's in you, do we really believe it's inside of us? Do we really? I would say most of the time, no. And one of the other problems is that even if you do believe it and you get to this level, then you think you're walking around like, man, Yeshua and I, man, we just whooped the enemy in this circumstances, and you're riding high in the sky. And then the next morning when you get up, you now got a trial that just went just beyond that one. It's like, oh no, I thought I had won. I thought this was over with. No, man, it's all relative. It goes from faith to faith and glory to glory. It's just one exercise after another. You know? So it doesn't ever go away. And we have to get to the point where we realize that we're in a fight. Shaul was in a fight. And he enjoyed the fight. We don't enjoy the fight. We don't want to fight. We're tired. We're weary. We're wandering around in this desert. We got dust up in our nostrils. We can't breathe. You know, our eyes are all puffy. Our bones are weak, and we're wandering along. We just want to lie down and rest. Yesterday, I just wanted to lie down and rest. You know, and just couldn't. You know, and this is what we want. This flesh is screaming at us. Give me a break. Stop putting me through this stuff. That's not what Shaul taught. He taught the exact opposite. You see, in human psychology, there's two types of motivation. Pain versus pleasure. Everything breaks down that simple. Pain versus pleasure. Humans will do almost anything to avoid pain, and will do just about anything to gravitate towards something pleasurable. And so, that is the flesh. And we've got to recognize that that is the flesh. That is how the flesh functions. That's the carnal mind. That's the kind of mind that Adam and Eve took on when they took of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's the sin. That's what's inside of us. That's the nature that we fight. So when you're going through something and you're shunning the pain, in that moment you're in the flesh. You're not in the spirit. You're in the flesh. Because you don't want no part of that. Instead, you should be like a bull and say, let me at it. You know, it's kind of like the matador holding the red blanket out there for the bull. You should be going right at it with aggression. But we don't do that. We run and we hide. Oh, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, you know. And we all just start whining and crying like a bunch of babies. And then we wonder why we're gluttons for punishment. And then another wave of stuff comes on us. And another wave, and another wave, and another wave. And it just keeps coming. Because the devil's angry and he wants to take you out of this game. That's what he wants to do. Let's move on. In Ephesians chapter 3, verse 1 through 13, it says, For this reason I, Shaul, the prisoner of Messiah Yeshua for you Gentiles, if indeed you have heard and understood. See, we can hear, but not necessarily understand. And this is what is the gist of what I'm talking about through this series, is that we hear. It's like when I was at the feast, I spoke a bit on this at the feast, and afterwards a guy came up to me who was a Pentecostal for like 27 years, and he just came into the Hebraic roots. And he came to me and he says, I have read Colossians and Galatians like 500 times in 27 years. Never have I ever seen Paul talk like that. How did you get this? I need to see more of this stuff. Because what Paul is saying is so legally different than what everybody's trying to make him out to be. They don't understand what his real arguments are. And so you can hear, but not necessarily really understand, because Christianity, and I would even say the body of Messiah and certain segments of it, have refashioned Paul's arguments in a way that makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. They have him as a schizophrenic, or he's a male chauvinist pig, one or the other, you know? And it depends on what group you're in, which subscribes to these different ideologies. So they don't want to even use Paul because they don't understand them. But you can understand them. Anyway, verse 2, if indeed you have heard and understood of the dispensation or stewardship of the grace of Yahweh, which was given to me for you. Verse 3, how that by revelation he made known to me the mystery, as I have briefly already stated. That was further up. By which when you read, you may understand my knowledge in this mystery of Messiah. You see, what I was saying before is, we're going through a religious initiation. Our flesh is being pounded day by day. Our natural minds are being assaulted day by day. And there's a battle to gain control over our minds and over our bodies. And you either embrace it or you don't. You become a victim of it. It's a paradigm shift. And so let's move on. Which in other ages was not made known to the sons of men, as it has now been revealed by the Spirit to his holy apostles and prophets. So what Shaul is saying is, at that time when he's writing this letter, prior to this was not understood by mankind. It wasn't even given to them. This was a new revelation. That Gentiles should be fellow heirs of the same body with Israel, and partakers of his promise in Messiah through the gospel. Verse 7, of which I became a minister according to the gift of the grace of Yahweh, given to me by the effective working of his power. Verse 8, to me, who am less than the least of all the saints, this grace was given to me, that I should preach among the Gentiles the unsearchable, past finding out riches of Messiah. Now he talks about the riches of Messiah. So we have the mystery, and then we have the riches. Kind of two different things. Similar, but different. And to make all see what is the fellowship of the mystery obtained through secret religious rites. See, this word mystery means obtained through secret religious rites. You are only going to get this thing through this initiation of this religious ritual rites that you're going through. What you're being subjected to is training you to understand something spiritual that the world cannot get, because it won't be initiated. You know, there's all kinds, you go to these like college frat houses stuff, they have these initiations. In order to get into this frat house, you got to go, run naked through the streets or what, I don't know. They got all these crazy things they make you do, and then that qualifies you to be in that sorority, And then we have all these other groups out there that do similar kinds of things. And so, in a way, this is Yahweh's kind of an initiation for us, because you have to be willing to subject this mind and this body to his complete will and let it get run through the mud, willfully allowing it to be run through the mud so that you can be trained to receive the riches of Messiah, which the world cannot get, because it won't go through that. Why? Because this is pain, this is suffering, this is massive pain and suffering, and I don't want nothing to do with it. Y'all are crazy. You don't need to keep the commandments. Y'all are crazy. I already have my salvation. I don't need the Torah. Why? Because for them, in their mind, they think of it as massive pain. I'm going to be constricted. That means I'm going to have to give up this. I'm going to have to give up this. And what they don't understand, it's their flesh is screaming at them and it is dominating them. And they haven't even understood this yet. And this is what we got to come to understand. Obtaining this mystery comes through affliction. This is what Paul is trying to get across. This only comes through affliction. It is a mystery because the world does not embrace affliction. It is the exact opposite of the world's philosophy. This is in essence a kind of secret of religious rites. I did not know when I came to Yeshua and got baptized, I had no clue that this is what this was about. No clue whatsoever. Had I known in my natural mind that I was going to go through this, I probably would not have got dunked. In my natural mind, I probably would not have got dunked. And so I think Yahweh protected me from myself, and I think He does it for a lot of us, because it's too much. It's too much for the average person to comprehend that and get that. Instead, He's compassionate, He's loving, and He's merciful, and He talks to us little by little as we go along the way. And as you're in this and mature as time goes on, then He starts to give you the deeper things. And as you start getting these deeper things, then you start saying to yourself, oh my. Oh my, oh my, oh my. This is about to blow my mind. This is way beyond what I ever thought. Way, way beyond. And then it really, to me, it humbles me. Because what it shows me is whatever I thought I understood in the last 34 years, it's nothing. It's like rubbish. Don't know anything. In comparison to what I see out in front of me and what Shaul's writing about, what he experienced, and the process that he's explaining what he went through and what he's imploring the Colossians to go through, and they're not getting it, The Galatians didn't get it. He even told the Galatians, I think you're so far gone that I can't even redeem you. Even with the Ruach HaKodesh, I don't have enough power to redeem you. I think you're gone. That's what he said to them. That's how far gone they went. Because these external groups were coming in and corrupting them with these other ideologies which pertain to the flesh, which is the covenant of Hagar. And they're destroying the covenant of Yeshua in the process. And so they'll never get to where they need to go in that state of mind, mentally and spiritually. So let's move on. Verse 10, to the intent that now the manifold many forms of wisdom of Yahweh might be made known by the called out ones to the principalities, which are humans, and powers, which are of the spirits, unclean spirits, in heavenly places. So get this. What he's saying is that now Yahweh has hidden this whole thing from mankind, from the foundation of the world. He even hid it from the unclean spirits. Now, through his apostles and prophets, through the Ruach HaKodesh, he's revealing what this mystery is, and the riches of Yeshua, which was hidden. And now as he reveals it to you, and you believe it, and then you start to grow in it, and you start to implement it into your life, and you see the fruits of it, then you are declaring to the kingdom of darkness what kind of power you really got. When you guys told me my whole life I was a wimp, but I didn't know anything, and I had no power. You had no confidence that you could fight in this world. But he's saying your job is to declare to the unclean spirits this kind of power. Now, if Yahweh believes it, and he put his spirit into Yeshua, who was human, and he accomplished it in him, then surely it can be done. Surely he wouldn't do this if he didn't think that it could be accomplished. So the problem is not with Yahweh, the problem is with us, with our limiting beliefs. We have limiting beliefs. And that's what wrecks us every single time. Because we don't question why we believe what we believe and how we came to believe it. And whether it's even true or not. And so then, because we don't even do that, we don't rearrange our beliefs so that it gets in alignment with what Yeshua is trying to tell us or what the Torah is telling us, and therefore we cannot affect what Yahweh is trying to do through us. Let's move on. Verse 11. According to the eternal purpose, as the show bread, which is unleavened, in the temple, which he accomplished in Messiah Yeshua our Master. You see, those 12 loaves of bread, which are unleavened, Yeshua says he is the unleavened bread that came down from heaven. But those 12 loaves represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And our goal is to try to be unleavened as much as we can and present ourselves every Sabbath before the Master and before the King. And so the bread, you can't use the bread from last week to cover you for this week. It don't work. Because that bread is now considered common and unholy. It's not set apart. You need a fresh loaves of bread that had to have been prepared yesterday, and you bring that in. Then it's consecrated. So every week, the showbread it's the bread of presence. We have to show up. Wherever you are, you have to show up. That's what we got to do. The shadow picture is the more we become, the more Yahweh can empower us little by little until he can trust us with more. He wants to trust you with more. He wants to trust me with more. And I get frustrated with myself because so much of the time I know that I'm just on the edge of breaking through something else, and I just feel like the devil comes in and he's hitting me more and more and more with more obstacles in my life to confuse and cloud the situation where my focus gets taken off of it. And as soon as my focus gets taken off of that goal, then it goes on the back burner, and now the things of this world are on the front burner. It's a hard thing to do, you know. Amen. It's hard to do. I'm not painting this as interesting. I'm giving concepts based on what Shaul is trying to expound in these scriptures. Verse 12, in whom we have boldness and access with confidence through faith in him. We have boldness and we have access. But so many times I find I don't come with boldness. I don't come with the kind of boldness, and I get mad with myself. You're just praying a lazy prayer. You're being very lackadaisical. Matter of fact, you don't even have really any convictions by the words that are coming out of your mouth. And I have to stop in that moment. I said, you know what? I'm better off not to pray at all. Better to go to work, do whatever it is I'm going to do. And when I get my mind straightened out and I get where I'm focused, where I really need to pray, because I really believe I need to pray, and I need to pray about whatever it is I need to pray about, then I can open my mouth. Until then, you're just blowing hot air. Not accomplishing anything. It's just idle words. It's not with faith. Therefore, I ask that you do not lose heart at my tribulations for you, which is your glory. See, what they weren't getting was this part of the richness of Messiah that he talked about earlier. And that richness is that it's through the trials and the sufferings and the tribulations, when this body and this mind is being afflicted, is where Shaul's getting his power from. That's the mystery. His power is coming through, he's willing to put himself out there and suffer and be beaten up for it. And then when that happens, Yahweh puts more power on him. More signs, more wonders, more miracles flowing in his life, affecting other people. Instead, we do the opposite. Oh no, I'm running for the hills. I got enough trouble in my life. I don't need no more trouble. Well, wait a minute. If Yahweh's in the control, and if he thought that you had enough trouble, why did he allow you to have another problem to come along? Are you doubting his wisdom for your life? Are you doubting that he has control over your life? Are you doubting that he cannot work out those problems in your life? I know it happens to me. I get frustrated. And I complain sometimes that, come on, not another one. I'm not even done with the 10 that's lined up behind me, and you got another one? Really? Are you serious? My head's about to explode. It gets tough. It really gets tough. Chastening is necessary. In Hebrews chapter 12, verse 3 through 11, it states, "For consider him who endured this type of hostility, which is disobedience, from sinners against himself, lest you become weary, sickened to the point of faintness." I don't know about you, but I've had times where I've had so much overload of trials and tribulation, I feel like I was going to faint. I just want to crawl under a rock somewhere. You know, and this is just the flesh being afflicted so badly to the point it's screaming and yelling and saying, I can't take this anymore. You're tormenting the daylights out of me. Stop! Stop! Give me a break! Become weary to the sick point of faintness and discouraged in your souls. I know we all suffer from discouragement. We have those moments where we feel discouraged. It just feels like nothing is going to work out. And it's especially hard, isn't it, when you feel like you're getting close to winning the prize, and all of a sudden it just gets stripped right out from underneath you. And you're like, what's up with that, you know? And this is what it says. But get this, we have not yet resisted or withstood to the point of bloodshed. None of it. I haven't. I don't know if any of you have. Maybe you have, but I haven't. I haven't gone through enough stuff in this life yet to the point that it's drawn blood out of me. Not for the kingdom's sake. I cut myself at the shop. That has nothing to do with that. I'm just talking about Shaul was beaten. I mean, he bled, thrown in prison, you know, tortured, and so forth. Striving through antagonism against sin. Are we really antagonistic towards sin? I would rather say I think we're rather complacent when it comes to sin. I view myself as being rather complacent. I take it seriously, but not to the point where I'm aggressive or striving with antagonism against it. I don't think I got to that point. I really don't. Verse 5, "And you have forgotten to the point of being oblivious to the exhortation or the comfort, which speaks to you as sons." When we're going through stuff and we're having a rough time, how quickly we forget all the comforting scriptures or prayers that Yahweh has spoken to us about the promises He's promised to you. How quickly it flees right out of your life and out of your mind and out of your spirit, out of your soul, and now you're totally focused and immersed in the trials and the tribulation you're going through. Oh, woe is me. I can't handle this. I'm tired of this stuff. I don't know when this is going to... It's just that murmuring in the wilderness that we all seem to go through. And so how quickly we forget the comfort that Yahweh has spoken to us. And yet that's what we should be focused on, because when you focus on the comfort, it's an act of worship. And as an act of worship, you're seeking Yahweh. And because you're seeking Yahweh, He will push the striving spirit of contention and trials and tribulations out of your life, because you're not focused on it. The flesh likes to focus on the negative. We're just predestined that way. We're wired that way. And we got to figure out how to unwire ourselves, to get a wire snippers and cut those cables and sever it. And we're just not there yet. My son, do not despise as to have a little regard to the chastening, training that educates of the master, nor be discouraged in a state of relaxation. See, the word discouraged is not really completely accurate. It means to be in a state of relaxation or complacency. That's what he's really trying to get across. When you are rebuked with conviction by Him. So when Yahweh's speaking to you and saying, you know, when you did this and that and the other, this is why this calamity has come on your life. Okay. Okay. And then you go about and you keep doing the same stupid thing you were just doing. That's what it's talking about. Not to have that kind of complacent attitude. Instead, you say, Abba, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I did not get that connection. Thank you for showing it to me. I'm going to go clean up the mess right now. Then you can be restored. And then your spirit can be restored. Verse 6, for whom the master loves, He chastens, disciplines as a child, and scourges with flogging every son whom He receives. Verse 7, if you endure, remain under the trial of chastening, training that educates. See, this is all about training. It's all about being educated. Training and education, they go together. This ritual that we're going through, these religious rites that we're going through, it's training and it's educational, if you embrace it. Yahweh deals with you as with sons, for what son is there whom a father does not chasten? But if you are without chastening, of which all have become partakers, then you are illegitimate bastards and not sons. Verse 9, furthermore, we have had human fathers who corrected us, and we have paid them respect. Shall we not much more readily be in subjection and be in obedience to the Father of spirits and live? See, in other words, if we just change our focus into this way, then we start to prosper. Then we start to have power. Then we start to have authority. And that means we start to have victory instead of constant defeat in our lives. But it's all about changing our focus. What are we focusing on? For they indeed for a few days chasten us as seemed best to them, but He for our profit, that we may be partakers of His holiness. So without this chastening process, without this ritual that we're going through, that's teaching us and educating us and helping us to grow, there is no holiness. There is no holiness, and we're not considered sons. Now, no chastening seems to be joyful for the present, as we already went through, but painful. Nevertheless, afterward it yields its peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Here we are again. It's back to this training again. See, what Yahweh's trying to do is He's trying to get our attention. He's trying to say, come on, guys. You got to get with the program. This is the formula. When you got trouble coming into your life, stop focusing on the trouble and start focusing on me, and I'll show you with all wisdom and spiritual understanding how to fix the problem. I'll show you how to have control over the unclean spirits that are working behind the scenes in the spiritual realm who are setting you up for your fall. I'll show you how to circumvent them. But that's that all wisdom and spiritual understanding that's way out there past us, that we haven't gotten to yet. Because too many of us are rejecting this process of this ritual, of this religious rites, this initiation. We are being initiated. Whether we like it or not, we're being initiated. So we have to come to a point where we embrace it. Back to Colossians chapter 4 verse 4, that I may make it manifest as apparent as I ought as bound to speak. Walk in wisdom that's spiritual towards those who are outside. See, I had talked about how Talmud deals with those on the outside, and then I showed the scripture how the Torah says how we're to deal in righteousness. redeeming as to rescue the time in its season. Verse 6, let your speech always be with grace and being grateful, seasoned with stimulating condiments along with salt. You see, when my wife cooks, or anybody cooks, the food tastes really, really good if you season it with the right kind of herbs and spices. If not, it's just a piece of meat or vegetables or whatever it is, and it's very bland. So the point here is that when you start coming into this all wisdom and spiritual understanding, Yahweh starts to show you when you're talking or witnessing to somebody how to sprinkle condiments on what you're saying so it's palatable. And they're like, wow, that's interesting. I want to come back for more of that. You know, how many of us have gone to a restaurant where the food is so terrible you don't come back? So if your food that's coming out of your mouth doesn't season with condiments and with salt, then it's not very palatable. The person could care less, and you've lost them. So we're to redeem the time to bring these people in, but it's with wisdom. We need this wisdom that show us how this particular person is constructed mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. How can I present the gospel of Yeshua to this person where it wouldn't work with that one, but it'll work with this one? Strategies have to be formulated, have to be changed to tailor to that person. So we need Yahweh to speak to us and give us this inside wisdom that He imparts to us by His Ruach HaKodesh to show us how to talk to that person to reach that person. That's the point. Or prudence, which allows one to discipline oneself by use of reason, that you may know how you ought to answer each one. This requires all wisdom and spiritual understanding from on high that imparts it to us, as I just stated. So back to Colossians chapter 4, verse 7. Tychicus, a beloved brother, faithful minister, and fellow servant in the Master, will tell you all the news about me. Now, who was Tychicus? Who is this guy? I just put together a few things here. He was with Paul at Troas and evidently journeyed with him as one of Paul's company. You can find that in Acts chapter 20 and verse 8, all the way to Jerusalem. Also, the second and third passages in the name of Tychicus occur, see above, give the information that he was with Shaul in Rome during his first imprisonment. In Colossae, Tychicus would plead the cause of Onesimus, who accompanied him from Rome. Under his shelter, Onesimus would be safer than if he encountered Philemon alone. There was a little problem going on there. I won't get into that. The passages in the epistle to Titus and to Timothy show that Tychicus was again with Paul after the appeal to the emperor had resulted in the apostle regaining his freedom. The passage in Titus evidently refers to the interval between Paul's first and second Roman imprisonments, and while he was again engaged in missionary journeys. The apostle writes to Titus, who was in Crete in charge of the churches there, that he intended to send either Artemas or Tychicus to him as to take the oversight of the work of the gospel in that island, that Titus might be free to come to be with the apostle at Nicopolis. The last passage where Tychicus is mentioned occurs in 2 Timothy, which was written in Rome not long before Paul's execution. So there's not really a lot written about some of these guys that went with Paul on his journeys. Not a lot of information, at least on some of them. We'll look at a few others here in a moment. In verse 8, continuing, it says, I am sending him to you for this very purpose, that he may know your circumstances and comfort through exhortation your hearts with thoughts and feelings. So the point here is that he has the ministry through exhortation. In other words, being able to articulate or explain things that will comfort you in your mind and then bring stability to your feelings. That was the point. With as a companion Onesimus, a faithful and beloved brother who is one of you. They will make known as to clarify to you all things which are happening here where Shaul was. So who's Onesimus? With Paul in Rome, Onesimus was a slave of Philemon. And Philemon in 1:16 says, belonging to Philemon, who was a wealthy citizen of the Colossae area and a prominent member of the church there. Onesimus was still a heathen when he defrauded his master and ran off from Colossae. He found his way to Rome, where evil men tended to flock as to a common center, as Tacitus tells us they did at that period. In Rome, he came into contact with Paul, who was then in his own hired house in military custody. What brought him into contact with Paul, we do not know for sure. The result of their meeting was that Onesimus was converted to Messiah through the instrumentality of the apostle, which states, "My child whom I have begotten in my bonds," in Philemon chapter 1, verse 10. His services had been very acceptable to Paul, who would gladly have kept Onesimus with him, but as he could not do this without the knowledge and consent of Philemon, he sent Onesimus back to Colossae to his master there. So I find that kind of interesting. Another point is that Paul does more. He furnishes Onesimus with a letter written by himself to Philemon, returning to a city where it was well known that he had been neither a believer nor even an honest man. He needed someone to vouch for the reality of the change which had taken place in his life. And Paul does this for him both in the epistle to the Colossians and in that to Philemon. Onesimus had evidently stolen his master's goods. I didn't realize that before leaving Colossae, but in regard to that, the apostle writes that if he has defrauded Philemon of anything, he becomes his surety. Philemon can regard Paul's handwriting as a bond guarantee of payment. In other words, Paul says, I'm going to cover his infraction. I'm going to pay for it. But that to put that to my account, as he states, are his words, I will repay it. Had Philemon not been a believer at this point, and had Paul not written this most beautiful letter, Onesimus might well have been afraid to return. In the Roman Empire, slaves were constantly crucified for smaller offenses than those of which had been guilty. A thief had it, and a runaway had nothing but torture or death to expect for those kinds of infractions. Another point here is the change which Yeshua makes. But now under the sway of Yeshua, all is changed. The master who has now been defrauded now owes allegiance to Yeshua. The letter which he is delivered to him by his slave is written by a bound prisoner of Yeshua Messiah. The slave too is now a brother in Messiah, beloved by Paul. Surely he will be beloved by Philemon as well. Then Shaul intimates that he hopes soon to be set free, and then he will come and visit them in Colossae. Will Philemon receive him into his house as a guest? Question. The result, it cannot be imagined that this appeal in behalf of Onesimus was in vain. Philemon would do more than Paul asked. And on the apostle's visit to Colossae, he would find the warmest welcome both from Philemon and from Onesimus. So, that's the end of today. This thing gets really involved. I'll try to do the last half of chapter 4 next week, and we'll get into this. Let's close in prayer. Abba, Father, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, I personally just want to thank you, Abba, for revealing this mystery and the riches of Yeshua, at least to the point where I've been able to understand the concept, where I didn't really understand the concept in the way that I understand it now. And so now Yahweh, who is whatever in my earshot of my voice and hears the same thing, it is now incumbent upon each and every one of us to study further the understanding of what is being written here by Paul. Because if we're going to be effective in walking in Yeshua and be effective as ministers of righteousness and to bring many sons to glory, then we need to be able to get this down. We need to really be able to understand it, Abba. And it is clear that the works of Satan is increasing on the earth right now, Abba. It is getting intense. And without your grace and without your supervision of your Spirit over top of us and without the blood of Yeshua, we do not stand a chance. Abba, empower your people. I don't know how you're going to do it, Abba. I don't know when the moment comes when it actually gets done. There are various theories, and it may very well be, Abba. But I'm praying, Abba, between now and then, I am praying, please, Abba, empower your people. Help us to get this down. Help us to start implementing it. Help us to start having our prayers answered. Help us, Abba, to be able to begin to destroy the works of the devil in our life and then in the lives of those who need to be freed from that. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, Abba, I just want to bless you for using my mouth today to speak your word. I pray that I did it honor, Abba, to the glory of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen.